Hello and welcome to Playwright, a podcast about creating and sharing new ways to play. My name is Ryan Hamann. I'm called H on the show.
And I'm Ryan Quintal. You can call me Q.
Now, I've been playing a lot of Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, I think is the Mario plus Rabbids. It's like an equation that they set up for us here.
That's right.
That's one that and this is probably a tired opinion by now, but that's one that I didn't expect would work. When I first heard the rumors start to circulate about a Mario and Rabbids RPG, it wasn't even, not a lot was known all the way back then. But when those rumors started circulating, I was really kind of averse to the idea, as I think a lot of people were, their initial impressions. And then somebody pitched the idea of, well, you know what, actually the Rabbids sense of humor could work really well with a Wario and Waluigi RPG in the vein of the Mario and Luigi series.
It's true.
And so I really caught on to that idea. Like, yeah, this could really work. I would love to see a Waluigi game starring him and Wario together, kind of bouncing off each other, letting us see their personalities in a little bit more of a expansive space like an RPG would provide them.
And yet, H, are Waluigi or Wario in this game at all?
No, not at all.
They zigged when you thought they would zag.
Yeah. It was just kind of a straight shot when I expected something off to the side. But what ended up coming out is this weird, wacky, wonderful, just bizarre game that shouldn't work by all accounts, but completely does just because of how damn hard they worked on the thing.
and it actually, I went into it going, okay, Mario, this is maybe going to be a game skewing for younger audiences. Well, if it is, it's for tactical expert younger audiences because it gets pretty hard.
That's the way with a lot of these games for younger audiences. The Crash Bandicoot games have been going back to recently with the PS4 re-release. And I feel like back in the old days, they used to think quite highly of us young folk with our still moldable minds before years of routine and alcohol set in.
It's true. And you know what? The game has so much of that sort of innocent charm and that Grant Kirkhope soundtrack that is so perfect that I'm willing to forgive a Bullet Bill trapped in underwear. I can look past the sort of weirdness and even embrace it.
Well, if you don't like bullet bills and underwear, you're not going to like my pitch today.
That should be the subhead for a review.
Just kidding. How about actually instead, why don't you start us out today? Let's shake things up a bit.
Well, people have heard, if they've listened to other episodes of this show, me pitch a product creation sim. They've heard me now in the last couple episodes talk about your workspace, and I'm going to take all of these ideas, hopefully, to their logical conclusion. This week, I'm bringing to you a complete non-combat MMO, okay?
All right.
Now, in this MMO, people live with, say, medieval times. There's no advanced technology. And players choose a class like a blacksmith or jeweler, glassblower, chef, tailor, carpenter. And each of these classes, they are to set up shops and trade and barter with the other classes to kind of keep the in-game economy going. So obviously shops need to be built, they need tables, stands, they need uniforms, decorations, all that sort of stuff. And all the classes rely on the ability to source both materials and goods and services from the other classes to sort of bolster their shop. So you can imagine a glass blower, for example, these classes can go out into the world and gather materials that they would use. So, a la a World of Warcraft, a glass blower maybe digs and discovers, exotic sands and minerals and dyes, and a jeweler can polish down stones and find gems and mine. Chefs hunt, cook, harvest plants for spices. And tailors can weave, harvest, cotton and flax for linen, that sort of stuff. And even, I think, maybe skin so that they can use, like, leather and stuff. And blacksmiths can make tools, temper steel. Carpenters, they cut down trees, and they literally build structures, that kind of thing. So the idea is to take essentially all of that pesky dungeon crawling of World of Warcraft, and instead make the moment-to-moment gameplay, sourcing materials for your shop or establishing trade routes or communicating with other players in a maybe hyper-realistic kind of way. I'm imagining it feeling closer to a Sea of Thieves feeling pirate adventure than a Ubisoft.
All right, starting the clock. I feel like I understand what you're putting out there, but I just want to make sure that we're both on the same starting point.
Sure,
anyways.
it's a little raw, so we need to really work our magic on this one.
Essentially, what sets this game apart is that people kind of perform like the necessary roles, and every job in this town needs to be filled by somebody. Otherwise, the work's just not going to get done. So instead of all being the grand adventurer, you have to kind of take a day job.
Yeah.
There's a space in video gaming for exploring that, the farming simulator and the forklift operator simulator type of games where it's all about kind of doing a real job. But I've never seen one of those in the MMO space. Maybe something like Eve or Grand Theft Auto Online, where there's a little bit more diversity in the actions that you're taking and a lot more kind of reliance on one another. I think in Grand Theft Auto, you're able to form kind of corporations and entire like gang drug rings. And
yeah. Well, I love the idea of, I don't know if you played the latest Fallout at all, but a portion of that game does involve kind of occupying these otherwise abandoned spaces and turning them into almost little villages for yourself or encampments. And I imagine that, the world might have some relatively large abandoned things, almost these empty cities, and maybe NPCs and stuff could populate them. So there's an automatic way to kind of earn money in addition to people actually buying your stuff. But the idea is like creating these micro communities, and like, if you really want some particular material, you're really trekking out to the far reaches of the world. And maybe, hey, you're considering setting up shop, in the desert as a glass blower because that's where you get all your good materials.
Yeah.
This is totally birthed out of me playing Destiny this past weekend and playing an MMO basically that is all about combat. I said, what if we dial this in the other direction?
Obviously, the thing that would be the biggest trap that I can see here that the game could potentially fall into is if there's no blacksmith around, then players could be just kind of wandering, waiting for somebody to log on for a very, very long time until a blacksmith does appear. But kind of a way to solve this is what you're saying is that like each player can kind of homestead on their own. And so if you wanted to turn this into a more kind of open-ended Minecraft but with jobs type of thing, then it could be kind of neat to say, even though I could use a bit of smithing right now, there's nobody around in town. I'm just going to venture out into the woods and see if I find any like recluse smiths out there.
Yeah.
And just see what I run across. There's always the possibility of running into other people with different skill sets. Maybe also empowering everybody with appropriate complementary combat skills so that everyone can be a hero in the story. And that would give people some incentive to actually be out and adventuring and get out into the world. And so, when you do run across somebody, it's not, draw your sword that might be hostile. It's let's check out what job they have and see if there's anything that we can do to help each other out.
Yeah, I like the idea of purposely taking combat and drumming it down, not to the point where it's not unfun, I mean, which is easy to say when you're pitching a game, but more in line with when I'm playing World of Warcraft, it's all about kind of learning my character skills and rotations. And then when I'm playing Destiny, it's just a one-man army sort of scenario. And I think it could be interesting that if the same way you learn your rotations in a World of Warcraft or any MMO, I keep referencing that one just because I think it's popular, maybe like the art of glass blowing is a particular, it's each their own kind of mini game in a more exotic way than MMOs typically are just like, okay, a linen can get linens and right click and then makes a shirt. I would like that to feel more like that is the moment to moment. Okay, I got this. I source this material. Now I have to make these things, and having that be a lot of what the game is.
Just to experiment.
Yeah.
Let's move the core baseline away from World of Warcraft for a second and think more about what would like an MMO Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley or Story of Seasons look like? Because, if your core objective is to build up your homestead instead of venturing across the continent to save the world, then this sort of non-violent cooperative gameplay starts to make a bit more sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. So going in that direction, or even, Minecraft, which you referenced earlier, I always felt like, Minecraft, it's kind of like hold out some seeds and you'll attract a chicken, that kind of thing. And I think, hey, if everybody kind of needs animals and everybody kind of needs plants, having that be an entire person's realm of expertise, and that like the way that somebody jumps into a multiplayer game and gets a bunch of things explained to them by their friend who already plays the game a bunch, like this is what's good at this and this and that. The same way when you hire a contractor to work on your house, they're like, well, this is how much these windows cost and this is how hard these materials are to get. You almost feel a sense of powerlessness in the situation that you're saying, well, okay, well, I believe you. You're the expert at this stuff. That relationship is very interesting, and I don't know how in sort of the Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley format to create a little bit more of that.
All right, so here's this. How about every player logs onto the server and they're placed into like a village or a homestead, or, I want them to kind of like build the village up with their, in cooperation with the other people that are placed in the server. They're kind of placed alongside maybe like 6 or 7 other players, or however many, like it could be up to, like 100 maybe, depending on the populations that we'd expect on the servers, but just like a manageable number of players to just form a village. And then whenever there are new players, there's just basically a different village somewhere else that is opened up. And
that's
so
cool.
All of these players will, they could probably go in with friends, or they can just be kind of randomly assigned and get to know their neighbors. And then there could be these like county fair events where all of these villages come together and they can have competitions for like who has the biggest squash, or
that's
who
great.
has the healthiest chickens and stuff like that. And I was thinking one thing about that is if you're placed in a random village and there's this real deadbeat there who, got bored of the game after the first week and is just not signing on anymore, that doesn't mean necessarily that you're, out of blacksmith. Potentially that spot could be filled by another player down the line, or I guess you could put in like a help wanted ad to replace your blacksmith, or I was thinking if a player is AFK, then that means they're away from the game.
Yeah.
That means that their character wouldn't disappear. It would just kind of become an NPC. So you can still interact with the player. You can still, it can still kind of like farm as it, well, I guess farm literally, but also figuratively in the sense of like a cookie clicker or those type of automatic games.
Yeah. A good companion app is what you're pitching.
Sure. Yeah, we can pitch a companion app for this as well. But you can still do business with the person, and you can still get their resources even if they're not there, because if people are in different time zones, that could be a nightmare to try to coordinate. But a player just, when they're logging off for the day, they just say, I want to make this percentage of my inventory available for this price, and I'll see how much I sold when I wake back up in the morning.
That's cool, and that encourages. I love when I open up Forza every time and it says,
yeah.
Hey, you raced in this many races. I'm like, no, I didn't, but thanks for the cash. That's a great way of simulating that. And I think you could even build in, like, if someone is long-term away, their shop, closes and someone else can move into their place, and they have to kind of either set up shop in a new place or something like that.
Yeah.
I love the county fair biggest pumpkin, or like suddenly you can have things that are common in these massive multiplayer games like daily quests and weekly quests, and you're no longer trying to just hope that a massive group of people are accomplishing them. You kind of want to rally your little village, which maybe is as small as like 5 to 10 people. Maybe they could all be your friends or something. And you're like, come on, guys, we can do it.
Yeah, and what if these county fairs were only between like 3 villages at a time? And so it would kind of be like the Splatfest, like they would advertise when they're happening beforehand, but they're not happening for the entire world at the same time. They're just happening for, groups of 3. And so you log into the game and there would be little signs around villages saying that, the county fair is coming up on the 21st. Be here and see what everyone has to offer. And then like everybody from those 3 villages is in a common space at that point. They can talk to each other. They can learn about each other's villages and just have like a social interaction there.
It would be really cool as well if then you could start entering into the world where there are village-wide quests of, hey, let's donate a bunch of grain and food and resources to, say, the farmer who's holding the stable of animals, and then the next month or week, hey, we're all going to get really great fertilizer, or we'll get great skins for our crafting material, that sort of stuff. So it's giving and getting. That's real sense of community.
Well, in that case, I have to give you an exit to this idea, and I have to get from you a name. That was very sloppy, but
yeah, okay. Well, I guess it's name time. I was going into this with maybe a little bit more hipstery Artisan Kingdom, but I think I would like to take your county fair thing. And what do you think of County Kingdom? Or Kingdom County?
Kingdom County. I think that's funny to me because I live in King County.
Oh,
in Seattle.
It feels like it should be taken too.
That has a personal ring to me. That is familiar and safe. But yeah, I'll take that. Kingdom County. That's nice.
All right. I showed you mine. Now it's time for you to show me yours.
Perfect. All right. Just how I like to do it. So what I'm coming in with is, in my job, I spend a lot of time on Miiverse, kind of gathering the word on the street, as it were, on Miiverse. And one of the communities that I like to hop into every once in a while is I always get mixed up what is the name of the game and what is the subtitle, but it is Style Savvy Fashion Forward, I believe, on the 3DS.
Oh, wow.
It's a game about creating these outfits for your little avatar and going on like fashion runway walks and holding entire fashion shows and buying new materials for new outfits. And it's really fun because these kids have a blast just showing each other the screenshots of their different outfits they're able to come up with, and they cosplay as famous characters, and they put up their like outfit of the day, and they get really into it, and it's really cool to see. Yeah, but the one thing that is always a bit disappointing to me is that all of these pictures are 320 by 240 or whatever the 3DS's resolution is.
Yeah.
And it feels a bit limiting. Like, what could these kids do with their creativity if they were given more of a canvas to work with? And so, instead of just saying, let's just up-res that for the Switch and call it a day, which is a good idea, and I fully support that.
TM.
Yeah, more fashion video games, please. I think that is an underserved audience, especially with something that's as like well-made and thorough an experience as Style Savvy Fashion Forward. I think Nintendo went a lot farther than a lot of its competitors go, and the extra work they put in really paid off, it seems. But I was thinking, what if I could come at this from a VR perspective and kind of create all aspects of a fashion show in virtual reality? And I know that I'd probably be speaking to a very small percentage of the audience, but I think that there's something that's there. And so I originally came at this idea just kind of thinking about what are different types of experiences that I haven't had in VR that could potentially work. And I thought about a haircutting simulator.
Oh, yes.
And because you got the, at least with the Oculus Touch, those little controllers could really easily substitute for scissors. And so, you can cut the hair and buzz it along the top and make these intricate hairstyles. then I thought, why not expand that out into a whole kind of suite of creating outfits and shoes and haircuts and makeup and just like all these things that you would do as a fashion designer, and kind of take the more kind of free-form, creative type of experience and roll it into something that has a narrative progression, that has some level of pizzazz when showing it off. And then, you could sit back and watch your fashion show full of fashions that you've created, and dresses and vests and all sorts of shoes and these just wonderful fashion creations, and watch it being shown off, just like feel like a real hotshot designer for a little bit. Start the clock. I wish I had some fashion terminology that I can pun into that, but let's start there.
Let's hit the runway on this one.
Yeah, there we go.
Perfect. I love this, and I hadn't even seen this game before, and now I'm, of course, looking at screenshots of it, and I love the idea of bringing a narrative into it, saying maybe you're starting off as a hairdresser and you make enough money to open up your own shop, and then suddenly you're into recommending outfits to people, and then you somehow come across materials. Now you're making the outfits, all the steps into, building your fashion empire.
Yeah, I think that, and I don't know if this is really possible with the level of technology that we have, but if this could be like a really cool educational experience and actually teach people some of the skills that come with dressmaking, and allow them to really kind of pick out the fabrics and lay them over a mannequin and pin them and, cut pieces out to make the shapes. And there could be like advanced tutorials as well that could teach them, this is how you plan out a dress, and this is how you make it fit the form of a body, and this is how you allow models to get in and out of the dress. And there could be some real, like, actual skills that the game could teach players.
Speaking of real skills, I just think that, like you said, the hair cutting sim or whatever, I think there are certain actions across each one that are very satisfying in VR. So for example, I love, while I'm cutting someone's hair, maybe to have them commenting on the work that I'm doing, or God forbid, be able to, as I'm cutting their hair, look at them in the mirror and see them grimace as I mess something up, or start to smile as they see the new them coming to life. Likewise, you take these two motion controllers, and this could even work on like PlayStation VR, where you are taking measuring tape and you're trying to get somebody's exact measurements.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of actions, like, for example, taking measurements, or laying cloth over dummies, that don't necessarily require a ton of physical space movement. And I think that that's always the challenge in VR. A hairdresser's standing in, a few places relatively, maybe even just one, if you're, depending on if you can rotate the chair of the person you're cutting their hair. And same thing with the person who's standing up for measurements, or the dummy. It would be a real shame to not be able to walk down the aisle, though, wouldn't it? It would need a Vive or something, but I would love, or maybe you just kind of step out at the end after you're watching your own fashion show, and being able to, take the applause from the crowd who are so impressed with you.
It would be kind of fun to be able to choose the music and to set the lights, and to kind of cue up these light shows to play along with the music. And so, while your model is walking down the runway, you can play like Through the Fire and the Flames if you want to get a real high energy fashion show going on.
That's really cool too, if you could plan the theme of your fashion show, and it's telling you, now we need to create like 3 rock and roll metal outfits, or whatever. And it informs what materials you're picking, even what kind of haircuts or hair dyes you're giving for these people. So maybe there's a bunch of fashion shows, right? Maybe in different themes. And you're becoming a known fashion person. You're stepping through these genres, kind of learning to appreciate all different types of fashion styles.
And you can even have Hitman-like, and this is not a phrase that I'm going to be using often.
Piano wire. You're going with piano wire.
player created scenarios as well.
Yeah.
Where one of my favorite things in the style savvy Miiverse is players will just, post, show us your favorite, Japanese style outfit, or show us your favorite green colored outfit, and just like give each other a theme. And then players will comment in, pictures of outfits that they've created and say, oh, I had so much fun doing this. Thanks for the contest. And, just be kind of bragging rights at the end of it. It's really cool to see players coming up with these ideas themselves and watching other like custom creations populate this field.
One of the things that's great about Miiverse, and even Miis in general, is that people have taken the Mii creator and ended up creating all sorts of weird, already, copywritten characters like Alf and, Bart Simpson, that kind of stuff. So I think players being able to give each other a theme, and not necessarily giving them explicit like tools, unless, Marvel wants to throw money at it or something, but saying, hey, show me your Avengers fashion show, and for someone to make a dress inspired by Thor or, inspired by Wonder Woman, who I know is not an Avenger, but we'll do a DC one too for good measure.
That's always my favorite thing to see, not necessarily like a straight outfit riff on,
right.
Yeah, not like the costume necessarily, but to see the, inspired by Captain America, to have the colors and to have, an emblem or a round purse that represents the shield instead of like the actual shield. And it feels like it takes a little bit more imagination that way. So I really do like that.
Yeah, and plus I think that depending on how much give you have in terms of, I know in the style savvy, fashion forward, you can sort of design your own stickers and emblems and place them on dresses, that kind of thing. If you can, say, have that level of style that you can apply to hair, maybe you've got some like physical, hold this hair in a position product, and then you can really mold it in a way that looks very specific.
Yeah, and of course, the game will be occasionally visited by ne'er-do-wells. People who just want to watch the world burn. But I have a feeling and a hope in my heart that most people that do play this are going to come to it rather earnestly. Just like the people who play the Euro Truck Simulator games.
Yeah, some people love European trucks.
I think they just really enjoy that kind of thing. It's an underserved market. I think that there's room for this can exist in earnesty, but if people want to have fun and sculpt penises and the hairs of their models or whatever, then, let them have their fun. But
right.
I do think that there is room for earnesty to exist in this space.
I agree. And I actually, now talking about Miiverse, and one of my favorite / occasionally frustrating when you're trying to find something Miiverse experience in Mario Maker, I would love just a big old fashion show browser, because my brothers and I, we go watch, for example, every year the BlizzCon costume contest, just to see who's going to come out on stage and what they're going to look like, and knowing what they're trying to go for. So imagine after you complete a fashion show, it's kind of locked in time, or you can save it, share it out, and then somebody can, the announcer comes on, this is inspired by blah, 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 blah. And then out walks the person. You're like, whoa, that's pretty good, actually.
You can post your screenshots to social media, of course. You can post your videos to YouTube. But it would also be interesting if the main menu was kind of like the Wii U's Wara Wara Plaza, where, it's just populated by a whole bunch of characters and outfits that players have created all around the world. And, the camera's just kind of zooming between these models, and you see their outfits, what they're wearing, and maybe like a little tag of where in the world it came from. And just to kind of put you in that creative mood from the beginning.
Yeah, or imagine being able to, say, remix if you're not necessarily a great hairdresser or whatever, and you just want to go in and curate and remix your own fashion show and be like, I want this person's derelict and I want this person's blue steel, and put those in the same show. And then you're essentially like, well, this is my aesthetic, or this is the fashions that I love this fall. Just imagine seasonal events and stuff too.
And worldwide events that everyone could participate in as well. It could be really cool. Could draw some attention.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I pitch this as a VR title, but realistically, it should also be made available to players who don't have VR. I think it would just be really cool to have that sense of like motion sensing, that, being able to get in really close to the dresses and to the hair and to really make those fine adjustments. But, maybe if there was still some way to do some custom content without VR, or whether those players would just be picking from a library of already created content, then there's ways to do it.
Yeah, totally. A way so it doesn't feel fully handicapped, but what you can accomplish in VR is really special.
Anyways, that is the end of this particular fashion show. I'm going to have to come up with a name. How about just Stars of the Runway?
Stars of the Runway. It feels a little reality show, which I think fits well.
All right. Doesn't seem to be anything else with that title, so Stars of the Runway it is.
Stars of the Runway.
Starring Tim Gunn. All right. We are finishing off with one submission from our community. I don't know why I emphasized one. It's always one. This is not the surprising part of the show.
It's one of many. And actually, on that note, we see your emails. Keep them coming. We're getting all the submissions, and we will get to each one you guys send us. We're working through them.
Yep. And we will let you know if we ever get low, Lil Jon style. For now, we have a bit of a backlog, but we will definitely get to your submissions. If you would like to submit, you can send that over to playwrightcast.com/pitch. You can email us playwrightcast@gmail.com or tweet us at playwrightcast. And that is PLAYWRITECAST.
You do that so well, H.
Thank you. The submission today comes from David Hartley, who says, "Hi, Ryan and Ryan. Loving the show so far. Great concept, and I very much like that you're keeping discussion snappy. Just listened to the Beat Farm episode, and I really want to play the game now."
We too.
Thank you very much. We've been sitting on this email for a little while now. Here's a little idea I've been mulling over, which I'm calling lens flare. I have the feeling that it's a bit impossible, but it could be fun. So, lens flare. Elements of GTA 5, The Sims, Better Call Saul, and the film Nightcrawler. I haven't seen that. Ooh, boy, I hope that's not on the test.
It's a good start.
Combine in a strategic game of creativity. You play as a jobbing film director set out into a bustling city by TV executives seeking stories to turn into mini films. Set in a sandbox open world, you take to the streets with your trusty crew members and capture the events you encounter. A fight breaks out in the street, turn it into an action sequence. Find busking musicians, head to the skate park and make them the music video. Spot a date in action, capture the love story and turn it into a scene of romance. I hope there are some limits on that. First, you will be out on the streets looking for the story. Then, when you find something you like, you will enter the shooting phase. Set your cameras, choose your angles, and in props or objects to give the scene more flair. Once you've got the footage in the can, head to the edit suite and splice all of it together. Add in some music for more flavor. Artier scenes will net you more money, and with that cash you can invest in more crew, better equipment, and more soundtracks or special effects. Find extra jobs. Head to the TV station to sign up as a news crew and speed off to get footage of crimes, disasters, or scandals as they unfold. Again, if you get the good footage, like the cops catching the robbers or the corrupt politician making a statement, then your bonus will be higher. Or sign up to make advertisements and spend time in the studio with actors, backdrops, and costumes. These jobs will be time sensitive. You might only have 24 hours to produce footage on an advert, or your pay will be seriously docked. There are maybe a couple of issues here. How can a computer judge the artiness of a film? How do you make an edit suite section interesting and not dull? Should the director and crew be effectively invisible when voyeuristically filming a romantic scene? Also, if you don't like the footage you shoot initially, you might need to have control of time so that you can have a go at shooting it again. Perhaps when you enter a shooting phase, you are able to rewind time at your will. In a similar vein to Sound Shapes in Mario Maker and Beat Farm, there should be an open mode allowing players to film whatever they like and turning it into mini masterpieces for others to watch and comment on. Oh boy. That is quite an armful there, but I like that a lot. Let's start the clock there and see where we can take this.
David, I know you're only on episode 4 with Beat Farm, but you have captured so many playwright elements, open worlds, photography simulators, crime. This is our person here who's writing in. I love this.
I really love this as well. I have to admit, I have like a voyeuristic interest, not in a weird way,
It's a
but
little weird. It's no, okay.
it's just, that's putting a really rude word on just like, I like people watching, I
Yes.
like going to the mall and just, looking at somebody in a crowd and thinking like, what are they thinking? What's their life like? What is their job? How high strung are they? That kind of thing. And, not dwelling on a stranger or anything like that, but just being interested in the world around me. And I think that that's what this idea really captures more than anything. And so I'm really excited about this idea of what is essentially a not on rails Pokemon Snap, but for people just living their lives out in the real world.
There's something baked into this that I also love in my video games, which is sometimes in these open worlds, writers are very clever and they will give two NPCs like the middle section of a conversation or something like that, or a very abbreviated conversation. And I find myself maybe passing by those things and going, I want to know more about these people, or I want to know more about, what's going on in that scenario. Sometimes they're commenting on you even. The idea of being able to blow that out to a Grand Theft Auto size world and just have the world itself. I don't know. Do you know Sleep No More, Ryan?
No, that doesn't sound familiar.
So Sleep No More is an installation in New York where you essentially go and it is an interactive play. I think it ends up being something tied to Macbeth by Shakespeare. And it's a bunch of stories happening all at once. And you are, as an audience member, putting on a mask and you're able to freely roam across this hotel and basically be a voyeur to any one of the stories you want. And you can't get them all in one trip. So the idea of a TV station saying, hey, I'm interested in crime drama, and whether or not you're even shooting something that's crime, but you're able to frame it as a crime is very interesting.
Yeah, that is really cool. And just being able to capture these moments of NPC interaction and get these really cool shots as well. Kind of like that war photography game that we pitched a few episodes back.
Yeah.
But being able to, be a physical presence in this world, set up your camera, wait for the golden hour or whenever it is that you like to shoot, and really kind of piece together a movie that you're happy with. When I was growing up, I played a ton of this game called The Movies by Lionhead Studios.
Yeah.
And that's one that has been like weirdly forgotten to time, because I remember really enjoying that and thinking that it was pretty like far ahead of its time for, what it allowed us to do. Like it was a really high quality production from what I remember as a child. Yeah, it's one that I never see people talking about anymore, which is unfortunate. In that one, you could set up very basic scenes of movies and string those together into narratives and add subtitles. And so, it was all very constrained, and you were just kind of arranging scenes that were predetermined. Not a ton of freedom in there, but enough to give you some artistic license. And, that was kind of cool, but something that is a lot more free form. You can place the camera, you can choose the characters. I like this sense of capturing moments as they're naturally happening rather than directing actors. But this definitely has a lot of that appeal as well.
Yeah, it's like if you were to enter into Westworld, but rather than to play a character in it, your job is to simply document things that are going on in it. The mechanic that, David talked about of a TV station going and putting you on assignments, I would like those assignments to last a while. So I have, at least a few days worth of stuff that I could be shooting, and maybe I assemble it. That could just be a whole different thing. Maybe it assembles itself and you kind of choose a theme a la like iMovie or something on the Mac. How many times have you seen a news station play a seemingly innocuous piece of footage, but because they put dun 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 in the background, it seems more ominous than it is, right? So being able to shoot for days, and then, the really great filmmakers in this world are probably going to, like did what you recommend, pick the same time of day so they have like tonal consistency and stuff throughout their films.
Yeah, and David expressed some concern for scoring methods and, how could a computer know what's artsy and what's not? And I think we can use kind of a rudimentary version of kind of like what Dead Rising did, where it was programmed to recognize like aspects of a scene. And I don't know how Advanced Dead
Violence,
Rising
gore,
was.
yeah.
But yeah, right. It can determine when there was violence within the frame. It could determine when there's something like erotic happening or when there's something, surprising or comical. And, all that is very subjective, but, they were able to figure that out. And I think that would involve a lot of, tagging of animations and tagging of characters and
or of locations even.
Yeah. And being conscious of what can be seen and what is obfuscated. And so I think that is definitely doable in this space.
Yeah, and even if you sign up with a news organization and they are specifically asking you to put together this mini documentary or something that is telling the story of what it's like to be poor in this, in lens flare city or whatever, and this is a great opportunity for you to not only explore the world in whatever method you want, but go and take these creations and bring them back. And the news, if everything's tagged properly, the computer should be able to say, yeah, you really showed, people in adverse situations, or, it knows whether or not you were taking pictures of, quote, low income or homeless people, that sort of thing.
I think the one element that David introduced here that really pulled me into this is the idea of time limit, not like a pressing time limit, not something where you really have to rush out into the world, because that would encourage you to get sloppy and discourage you from being more artsy and being more hands-on with your creation. But I like the idea of having to take jobs every day and only having like a day or two to get that footage. And so you have to be looking for something else every day, and you have to kind of turn your attention to different parts of town.
Yeah, if you have to turn it into the TV station, right, then you have to think about your route through the city if you're going to get back in time, if there's traffic or something in this world. Traffic, that's a fun mechanic, right?
Sure. Yeah, and I don't want to do anything that would cause players to feel burdened by the time limit in a way that they wouldn't have as much fun setting up the shot because they feel like they have to get everything so they can rush back to the studio.
Right.
I want them to have enough time, but, not be able to accept more than one or two jobs every day. Maybe they find a few that all require shots of forest wildlife, and they're able to, knock out 5 birds with one stone. Probably not literally in that situation.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point, because real photographers will store up like a database of stuff, and they can later reference it. I can't help but wonder if, like, say you did want to include editing or whatever, if you dramatize this or kind of used cheating movie time to tell the story, then it could always be, once your time limit's up, it's kind of the night before your assignment, you're doing your editing, and that could last any amount of time until you're happy with it. It's just kind of, you're working through the night. And, I could see that as a really, if you're, playing once a day or something in your real life, that before you go to bed, I want to finish my edit and submit it and get my score. And that's a really satisfying loop.
Which the PC version of Grand Theft Auto 5 does have. And that might have been added into the current gen console versions as well. But they have a pretty robust film editing suite there. Man. So you're able to kind of create these cool scenes and do a lot of what this idea entails. Just it doesn't have the same kind of, nobody is asking for this footage. And so it's not scored in that way. Which is a really cool wrinkle. This could probably pretty easily be built into a Grand Theft Auto game, or, even maybe modded in with a very ambitious mod. But then again, every single person you'd get would be, starting fistfights or flipping you off or something. So, maybe not the same kind of environment that we'd want to create, but it's definitely possible, very difficult, but definitely possible. But we're going to have to close the book on that one. The title that David brought to this is Lens Flare. So let's go with that. I like that. I think that has a lot of flair to it.
It's perfect.
So that is David Hartley's Lens Flare. Thank you for that. That is wonderful. I love reading that, and I'll continue to think about that a lot.
Now, H, I'm a little concerned here because he spelled flavor Flavour.
Yes.
I think we might be dealing with someone who's European.
I do have to ask, why does that concern you?
Because we're going international for the first time. Isn't that exciting? Well, I guess we have before, but man, it's great to see listeners writing in from every old place on the planet.
I do appreciate that. I know that that both of our guests previously have been international. So, at least we have some friends on different continents. I have some podcasting ties to some folks over in Europe, but would love to hear some ideas coming out of all the different continents. If you have any African or South American or Asian or Antarctican friends, please call your Antarctican friends. This might be our only chance.
And the best thing you can do when you're telling them to write in is share with them the show. You can get it on Apple Podcasts. I think we're on Google Play now and every old place, as well as playwrightcast.com.
Lovely. Our theme song is composed by Protodome. It is called Hello World from the album Blue Noise. It's one that I like to listen to, like to throw on in the background. It's a really pleasant album all throughout. My favorite album of his is called Family Food. You should start there. That's a nice place to start and just kind of get a feeling for his sound. All right, and to take us out today, I am pitching a mini idea. How about a 3-dimensional, and I mean this to say anti-gravity, throwing it in all directions, bowling game? I don't know how it would work, but it gives you something to rattle around in your minds. And so let us know if you have any ideas for how a 3-dimensional bowling game would work. We'll see you next week.
Bye.